I just want to say thank you so much to our colleague Kelly Johansson, who has been pursuing a degree in this area, and then came to us in CAT and said, you know, this would be a really nice thing to kind of share. And then with the work we have done with the advanced grant and kind of trying to build our village and support each other, we thought this is a perfect way to do this. CAT has been doing, as many of you know, that you've participated, have been doing some needs assessment, and the issue of well-being, work-life balance, burnout, like has emerged as one of our top 3 things, along with pedagogy and scholarship. Wow. So this is really important. I'm really glad you're here, Kelly, and I'm looking forward to learning from you.
All right. Thank you. All right. So for those of the couple of you who don't know me, that I don't know, I'm Kelly Johansson. So I have been in the chemistry department here at Xavier since 2008. But I obviously am not here today to talk about chemistry. I am here today to talk about mental health. And so for the past couple of years, I have been working on my master's in clinical mental health counseling through the online program at the Chicago School. I am just about to start my clinical work. So I'm almost done with my coursework, and hopefully as long as I can get my internship placement secured for the summer, I should be able to graduate next spring. Yes, again, that is as long as I get my internship placement secured for the summer. That's the big if. But if for some reason that doesn't happen, I'll be able to graduate in the fall. So it's the following fall. So it's just a matter of getting all that secured. So as Elizabeth said, you know, this is really a very important topic for all of us to consider. This is something that has come up with increasing urgency, especially over the last couple of years. So just seemed like a perfect time for us to get together and have a conversation. But first, do a little icebreaker. Because one thing I learned in my mental health journey is that icebreakers actually have a function. All right, I've actually seen some good icebreakers. So I'd like to go around the room and share a song, a book, or a movie that helps you feel inspired when you're not feeling so inspired. So whoever wants to go first.
I'll go. Adele.
Okay. What?
I'm going through my Adele phase.
Okay. Any particular song?
I don't know. For some reason, if I just have any of her stuff on and I'm in a slump, especially now that I've been sick, I've been in a slump. But for some reason, it like gives me just enough motivation to get up and just move.
Okay.
I don't mean dance.
Right.
But I could. But you know, just
All right.
on my computer and try to knock some dishes out. You know, I just need to get up.
Yeah.
Just the music.
All right. That's awesome.
Don't judge me for that.
No. Adele.
All right, I've got
Okay.
and I'm gonna encourage you to listen to this. Okay, so this is called "Look Up" by Joy, and I would say Ola Dokun.
Okay.
I might be messing up her name, and I apologize, but it's called "Look Up," and I actually have played it in class a couple of times too. And it's just look up, you see the sunrise. Look up.
Okay.
Just flash in your hair. It's just gorgeous.
Okay. All right. Adele. Look Up. All right. Who else? I'll put one.
There is a favorite song of mine right now. That makes me happy.
All right.
It's Victoria Monet. She's a newer artist, and I listen to the radio during my drive. It's about 15 minutes. It comes on a lot.
Okay.
And the lyric starts off with this like, on my mama, on my whatever, I feel fine, I feel good.
Okay.
And it's just something about that just makes you want to flip your hair a little bit and
All right.
reboot.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
I'd like to go with the music thing too. An oldie, a real oldie from the 700 BC approximately. I sing it every day. And it's a translation by the late Dr. Michael Holman here at Xavier, who translated it from the ancient Greek.
Oh, wow.
And it's a little song about how Mother Earth contains everything.
Wow, that's really incredible.
So you recite it?
I actually sing it because, of course, we don't know the melody, so I.
Right.
I don't know.
That's great.
That's amazing.
It looks like our online people have added some songs, but for me, I probably, when Ally McBeal was on TV and she had a theme song, I did some online quiz. And it said that my theme song was Walking on Sunshine, and ever since then, that's the song that I pick up first when hearing this question like yours. Because that song really does. Make me feel kind of,
Right, that is a great song. So we're going through and saying a song that makes us feel kind of uplifted or positive. Maybe we're not feeling this. We have something in the chat.
Yes, Camille
Okay.
Densler said, Fetch Your Life by Prince KB SAKI.
Okay. That sounds like a great one. I'm not familiar with it, but that sounds great.
Mine is
Okay.
something.
Okay. Yes, yes, yes. All right, what about, do you have a song that you listen to that makes you feel uplifted?
I used to play a lot of Celia Cruz, Cupid, like Afro-Latin music. So usually it's something up tempo, like Latin jazz or like brass band, something that's just like, okay, now we're in flow, like, and it gets my kids dancing too, so it's just kind of like resets the
Right.
tempo of everything.
So in the theme of extremely abstract,
One of the ones I listened to is Spring Day, which is.
Wow.
K-pop.
Yeah, yeah.
But the song itself is actually not upbeat.
Uh-huh.
A lot of their stuff is upbeat. It's one of the ones that's like a calm
Uh-huh.
one. But it's yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Mary, do you have any? Do you have anything?
I've been listening to some long series on it. No, right, so no music. I've
But
been
still.
listening to
But,
Bounty Hunter in New Jersey.
okay. So we're talking about anything like music, books, movies, anything that you listen to or watch that uplifts you. Read, anything you do, anything in your life that uplifts you.
Scuba diving, counting fish.
All right. Excellent. All right. So just to kind of take a minute before we get started to think about some things that we already do that bring us some joy, some little bits of peace, things that we already know in our life that we can kind of turn to. All right. Before we start, maybe segueing into what's bringing us down. All right. Because we all know that there is a problem. Right? That's the reason you all are here, is that we know that there is a problem. We acknowledge that there is a problem. Oops, sorry. All right, so what are our goals for today? Over the two-part series, I want to give you some information so you can appreciate the impact that student mental health has on faculty mental health. I know you all already appreciate that, but in a sense, I want to make sure that everybody here feels validated. That this is a real problem, that we are actually at a crisis point in society right now, in academia, in colleges and universities. I want to make you aware of how you can assess your own risk at this stage in your career, in your life. I want to give you some tools that you can use right now to help mitigate your risk, to help counteract the risk that you have at this moment. And then I want to see what we can do to work together to implement some changes, not only in our own lives, but maybe here at Xavier. All right, and I know this is kind of a lofty goal, but we have to start somewhere. And sometimes change has to come from within. So, you know, the whole be the change you want to see in the world and all that great stuff. So from a mission-driven perspective, I feel like sometimes this is maybe the message that we're given. But of course, this is not what we should be doing, right? We need to move away from this perspective because we have to self-guard our own mental health before we can help our students. All right, so let's see. I need to minimize this. All right. So this whole idea of you can't fill from an empty cup, why is your cup so empty? I think I could ask each of you and you could give me a lot of reasons. But of course, I can't get too far away from my science background, so I have to look to the literature. And I have to give you some facts. We all know that our jobs have changed a lot. Those of us who have been here for 5, 10, 15, longer than that, right? Those of you who've been here longer than me can tell you it's continued like that. But we all know, particularly since COVID-19 has hit, things have gotten appreciably worse. We can say that. Is the data there to show that? Yes, it is. Not surprisingly, it is there. All right, so I have a few studies that I wanted to share with you all. And of course, like any good scientist, I have my references and I also have the PDFs I can share with you later if you want to read these studies on your own. So you can look a little bit deeper into it. So again, we have a lot of different things pulling at us. So one of the first things I wanted to share is a survey that was administered by the Healthy Minds Network. So this was done it was 12 different colleges and universities, administered to over 1,600 faculty, a range of sizes of universities, so small to large. And they looked at what has been the impact or the perceived impact of faculty of student mental health. So first of all, what do faculty perceive the change in student mental health has been over their time in their career and then throughout the pandemic? So as you might expect, faculty perceive that in their time over their career, student mental health has declined, and particularly since the beginning of the pandemic. So what we are seeing is being echoed out there in a larger sense, right? We are not we are not alone. We are not the only ones who are seeing this. This is being echoed around the country, okay? And this is just to show, again, we're not alone. We're not the only ones seeing this. Faculty are spending a significant amount of time having one-to-one conversations with students about their mental health. So this statistic I thought was particularly significant. Almost 80% of faculty have had one-to-one conversations with students about their mental health. And when they broke it down by gender, it was 85% of female faculty. All right, so slightly below 80% of male faculty have had one-to-one conversations with students about their mental health. 21% of faculty felt that supporting students had a negative impact on their own mental health. Right, and again, this was a pilot study. This is the first time that this particular study, these particular questions had been asked, right, in this format. Now, this study is available and we can ask for these questions to be done here at Xavier. We can contact them. This is an open study that can be done on a wider spread basis. All right, so this is something that definitely needs to be looked at more. And this is just to show you how new this type of research is. All right, so we're only just beginning to look at the effects of student mental health on faculty mental health. So in STEM, especially for women, the pandemic had a very serious impact. So this was a survey done looking at female STEM academics experiences during the pandemic. I had to, screen grab the title because I really liked it. I thought it was particularly impactful. And what I especially liked about this study is they not only looked at the experiences during the pandemic, but then they went back and looked at from 2020 to 2021 to see if the negative changes from the pandemic continued after, the pandemic ended. So after the universities went back to business as usual, what happened then? What were the experiences of the faculty then? So research productivity continued to decline. All right, all of the pressures that were piled on the female faculty continued to increase. Their mental health struggles increased, and 10% maybe doesn't seem like a huge increase, but that was going up from 34 to 42%. So all the 34% of the female faculty said they had mental health struggles in 2020, and 42% had mental health struggles in 2021. So that's not great. They reported they had increased expectations to support students. Many expressed frustrations with their university's policy of business as usual. And I had to grab this last quote because I thought this was particularly a good quote. In short, the current findings suggest that support for tenure track women in STEM deteriorated over the course of the pandemic, reflecting academic environments that went from chilly to frigid. So again, just to show you that this is a universal experience in academia. This is not something that we are experiencing in isolation. And finally, I wanted to share a narrative review that pulled together a lot of information that's been published throughout the past 3 years from faculty mental health resources that said that 1/3 of campus communities experience anxiety, depression, or stress on a regular basis. So this is looking at all faculty, staff, or students. So in any campus community. That if the first study of postdoc experiences in Nature, looking at how they reflected on their experiences, found that 32% found that it was worse than they expected, and over half would not recommend the career to their younger selves. So not looking real great for the next generation coming behind us. So we have a mental health crisis for faculty right now, and the group that's coming behind us is seeing that, and they're already maybe making the decision, do we really want to proceed in this path? Because they're seeing what we are struggling with right now. And then I had to grab these 2 quotes from the article as well, because instead of summarizing them, I thought they did a pretty good job of explaining exactly what we're going through. Universities consistently generate administrative, pedagogical, and technological demands that are often overwhelmingly and exert a physiological and physical toll that affects the sustainability and collegiality of academics. In general, universities are often more interested in the research findings and success stories of their faculty members than in their personal stories or mental well-being. So again, I see a lot of head nodding. So I feel like we have a lot of agreement here. So what do we do with this? That's the big question. What do we do with all of this information? We know this, we feel this, we see this on a daily basis. But what do we really do with this? How does it impact us day to day? So when students share their trauma, our own trauma history gets triggered. Right? When our decisions impact students, we can experience disenfranchised grief. All right, is everybody here familiar with the concept of disenfranchised grief? All right, so disenfranchised grief, this is a concept, grief that has nowhere to go. So let's say if you have a student that has been working a bunch of jobs to pay for school, and because they're working a bunch of jobs to pay for school, they're not coming to class. And so you have that tough conversation with the student about their inability to come to class. and they tell you, I'm not coming to class because I'm working. And so you have that difficult conversation with them about, you know, you have to come to class, and you learn about their family's financial situation, and that they have to work to support their family. And so they can't come to class. Right? So you go through all of this with them, and at the end, it's their choice, right? Whether or not they choose to come to class or go to their job. And they're in this real situation, right? They have to make this financial decision. You can't make this decision for them. And they have a lot of real factors going on there. What do you do with that feeling that you go home with? That you have to fail that student. Now, they've made real choices that have led to this situation, but they've got these pressures on them. That feeling, that's grief. That feeling's got nowhere to go. All right, so that's disenfranchised grief. All right. What do you do when you have to advise a student to drop a class when you know they're going to lose their scholarship? Because they're taking too many hours, because they were taking developmental classes, and they have to have 30 hours as a freshman, but they were in developmental math. Right? Now they have too many hours. They have to drop that class. They're going to lose their scholarship. But you have to tell them to drop that class because they're going to fail. What do you do with that feeling?
I think we should address that.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for that.
Right, right. No, we definitely,
That's something I definitely.
we definitely need to. No, we definitely need to. But what do we do with that feeling? That feeling is grief. That is disenfranchised grief. All right. We feel that almost every day. There are decisions that we have to make as faculty that come from decisions that students make. We can't always fault them for making those decisions. Sometimes we have no choice about the decisions that we have to make as faculty members, but those decisions cause us to have real emotions that we have no place to put those emotions. All right, that's disenfranchised group. All right, and if we don't figure out something to do with those emotions are going to accumulate. Right? No. Speak up.
So on your last slide,
Mhm.
I was, before you got this, I was thinking, you're talking about the increased
Right.
plans and technological things and administrative tasks. And I was thinking in my mind of a conversation I had with friends and other people. And a couple of us were in academia and COVID and we had to learn all this stuff. And there was people that were sort of in corporate America. Like, well, that's no different from anyone else. Like, that's just your job. You'll always have more paperwork or, the more productivity. People don't care about your well-being. They care, and I know we're nonprofit, but we still care about keeping our doors open and making enough money. And why is it so different? Why are you guys so trash? And my thought was, I don't think that we're fragile. It's that we are in a service profession. Like, talk to nurses, talk to people who work for charities, talk to people who outreach with the disenfranchised, the most vulnerable of society. And it's because I was thinking of all this, and then your slide came up with all that. I have so many conversations with students who are living couch to couch. They don't have, it's in an abusive household, and all of these things. And again, I'm trying to balance, ultimately, you need to do this to pass the class. I need to be fair. I can't treat you special from the 300 students or whatever, But it's that that makes it hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that any of that other stuff is any different in any other industry. Yeah.
Right. And it's this.
Yeah.
And there's studies that show this, that the student-faculty relationships are what make universities like Xavier special. And are what make our students succeed. So if we are going to keep what makes Xavier Xavier, we have to be able to do our jobs in the best way possible. So we have to be able to maintain our ability to be caring educators, right? And to maintain this ability to be caring educators, we have to keep the ability to care. All right, and so part of what makes this mental health crisis so dangerous is that it affects our ability to care. Not only does it affect our ability to be effective as teachers, but it also affects our ability to care. All right, and that goes into burnout. But so we talk about making constant adjustments for student mental health issues. We've all probably experienced this, right? Compassionate fatigue, right? You're compassionate, but how long can you be compassionate? I think you've all experienced that where you're like, sure, I can make that adjustment. I can move that deadline. I can do that. And then the 15th student to ask you, or the 20th, or the 50th, all of a sudden you're like, okay. All right, okay, sure. And then sometimes after a good night's sleep, you can do it all over again. And sometimes you reflect and you might feel bad about that one student maybe you were a little short with. Or sometimes maybe they email you and you realize that you weren't as compassionate as you were. I had a student that had an emergency and ended up being in labor during my final exam. I didn't realize she was pregnant all semester. I didn't find out that she had had a baby after my final exam until 2 weeks later. She never spoke to me all semester about being pregnant. She was sitting down every time I came in the room. This was, probably 10 years ago, right? Before I really got in the habit of talking to people and really getting to know them. I was, a newer faculty. I had a small kid. I was more concerned with the day-to-day. I was a little more fried every day. When she came to talk to me afterwards, it was really her friend who came to talk to me afterwards. I was so upset. I had no idea that she was struggling. And now I kind of make it a point at the beginning of the semester to take a few minutes in class and talk to students and be like, if you're struggling, come and talk to me. And those few minutes sometimes help. And we can't go back and fix things that we've done in the past, but we can think about how we can do things better in the future. We also can't blame ourselves for being overwhelmed and maybe not always knowing what the right things to say to students are. We can't also blame ourselves for being overburdened in a situation that puts too much on us. All right, so we have to think about what do we have to do both individually and as a community to try to make this situation better. So we can increase our own resilience, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in part 2. I'm going to introduce a little bit this time. But first, you have to honestly assess the impact on yourself. Before you can start working on resilience, before you can start working on mindfulness, before you can start doing all these things, first, you really need to honestly assess where are you at this stage? What is the impact on your life? And burnout is more than a phrase or a phase. So let's talk about burnout for a minute. What is burnout? I have to do the entertaining burnout first. So what is burnout? What exactly is it? So burnout is not just something, I'm burnout. I can rest, I can get better tomorrow. Burnout can be a syndrome. Burnout can be deadly. People can be hospitalized for burnout. It's serious. So there's a couple of different ways to classify burnout. Christine Malash, whose name I cannot pronounce, the woman who, Maslach, Maslach, there you go. Okay, Maslach. So she is kind of the pioneer of burnout research, and she categorized burnout into 4 phases. And this is, after looking at a bunch of different ways to classify burnout, I like this way of classifying burnout, so I'm going to present this. So we start off with the idealism and overload phase. This is like, I'm going to work really, really hard. I'm going to get everything done. All right. Obviously, you get exhausted when you do that. Then you go into a stage where you start to dehumanize everyone and everything around you in order to protect yourself. And finally, you get into the terminal phase where you don't care about anything or anyone or everything. And that's where things get dangerous and we lead into hospitalization, suicide ideation, drug abuse, where we don't want to go. But it's not always a linear path, right? We can move kind of back and forth through these stages. The problem is a lot of this idealism and overload, emotional and physical exhaustion, we reward a lot of this, especially in academia. This looks like good job, right? This looks like an excellent tenure package, all right? So we have to be really careful about recognizing where we are in some of these stages and stopping ourselves and stopping our colleagues and stepping back and making sure that when we're in these stages, that we're not letting it take away from what we can offer ourselves and what we can offer our students. So that's what we want to kind of focus on for right now, is recognizing some of these stages and how we can take a step back from them, or how we can recognize when we are in these stages.
So I have a point.
Yes.
That kind of relates.
Mhm.
Looking at this, I'm less familiar with the
Right.
classified burnout, but a lot of these look like connections to what I know about the stages of depression. And how much interconnection is there between burnout and depression, or how much do they actually separate?
So there is a lot of overlap between burnout and depression. And so there, if you have depression, you're at higher risk for burnout. There is a lot of overlap. But one, I would say, distinguishing factor between burnout and depression, especially in some of the earlier phases with the emotional and physical exhaustion, it would go away when you left work. So if you're emotionally and physically exhausted because of burnout, that would disappear when you left work. So if you were like on vacation, if you were away from work, you would be fine. And then as soon as you got back to work, or as soon as you thought of work, it would all come back at you. The further down you get, though, the more that you're unable to separate yourself from work at all. And so then I think it becomes more indistinguishable. But at the earlier stages, it's a little bit, you're more able to separate work as the source versus a pervading sense of kind of fluid. So work really is more the source of all of the negative feelings. But again, there is a lot of overlap, and so it can be difficult. But I think the primary thing is, in the beginning stages, at least, all the negative emotions are tied directly to work, and they're not tied to other feelings in your life.
I think there's some nuance, especially this conversation with talking about women in academia, especially being at a campus that is full of young Black women. You're burnt out at home.
Yeah.
And then you come.
It is hard.
So it's like, I'm away from home.
Yeah.
Not burnout. And then come
It's a different. It's a different type of burnout. It's a different type of burnout. It is.
So I'll go home.
The part where you sit in your car.
I do that.
Or you sit in your car.
Where
you sit in your car.
It is.
Yes. No, there's definitely.
And I sit there.
There's definitely a phenomenon if you're an academic, female academic, and you have kids where you, especially when your kids are younger, where you sit in your car for a period of time, or you go to the grocery store and just walk around with the cart. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, definitely. Sorry, my screen just decided to go black. Come on.
It's burned out.
Well, you got to go into tech. So one thing that when I have read about burnout from this side perspective, one of the things that I think it's so important for us to think about is a real characteristic of burnout is cynicism. And if we're, and I'm gonna call us CAT active. right?
Yes,
CAT
that,
active
and
people,
that's coming up.
okay.
Yes.
Well, no, see,
Yes,
you know,
we are coming up on cynicism.
we're engaged, but if we
Yes.
become cynical, then we enter that, and we got long careers still left, even though those have been here for a while. I still have some career left in me, I don't wanna get cynical, right? So I think that's always been a real motivator
Yes.
for me to really attend to this when I feel it and take it seriously.
Is that
Yes.
a one-way stop? Or does it, can you back out of it?
You back out of it, but
Yes.
you gotta deal with your.
All right. So, we're not quite to the homework. We're not quite to the homework yet, but for homework tonight, so hopefully you all are going to come back for part 2. Now that I'm sort of depressing everyone, hopefully you're going to come back for part 2, which is where we're all going to be reinvigorated. Yes, we can conquer this. I'm going to ask you all to take the MBI or a version of the MBI that I've cribbed off the free version of the internet and modified just slightly because it was for health educators, and I've just changed it to make it a little bit less health educatory. So it measures 3 factors of burnout, which are really taken from the emotional and physical exhaustion component. So that's exhaustion, the depersonalization or cynicism, and then personal efficacy is really, again, looking at kind of like that idealism overload. And it's really kind of looking at some of those other factors. All right. So the inventory that you're going to complete for homework, and I have a QR code on the last slide, on your homework slide, and there's also going to be a link on these slides here. I'm going to ask you to complete this homework and take a look at before the next time we meet, so you can kind of see where you are on each of these sections. No, it will not be graded. It will not be graded. And I will not see I can see responses, but not whose responses are what. So that the responses will be anonymous. You can also see your score without submitting it if you just want to take it and record your score and then not submit it so I can't see it. All right. So this is what overload, idealism, exhaustion looks like, just to give you a few characteristics in case you couldn't quite figure out what that phrase meant. So working harder to demonstrate your self-worth. And I had to include my favorite ministry quote up there. Never trust a junkie. So if you're saying, no, I really need to work this hard, ask someone if you're being honest about how much you really need to work.
Don't ask someone else to burn out.
Don't ask someone else who works at daycare. All right. Inability to switch off from work, withdrawing from social activities, problems with sleeping, eating disorders. These are all signs of overload and exhaustion. These are not signs of a committed faculty member.
Can I make a quick?
Yes.
Advertisement here on Monday, we have Kevin Coakley coming. He's talking about imposter phenomenon in minoritized students. Who's going to be focusing on T. But I also think for faculty members that demonstrating self-worth, I really encourage you and your colleagues to go.
All right, cynicism. There we go. Problems are caused by work, not by the lifestyle changes. All right, so this is it's not my fault. I have to work this hard. All right, it's just the work, right? It's not me, it's the work, right? Becoming more tolerant to others' mistakes, right? If only everyone else wasn't such an idiot, I wouldn't have to work this hard.
The burnout is lifting with every laugh.
Withdrawing from personal connections. All right, so this is what Elizabeth was talking about. So when we start to see our students as the problem,
Not the student, not the.
People do.
Oh.
or
Oh,
yeah, and sometimes and this thing, so we have to balance between making the students accountable, but also seeing the students as the problem. So we have to be able to see the students as having a valid part of their responsibility without projecting our own feelings of burnout onto them. That's difficult to do when we are so burnt out.
And again, just because like people say, not the students, again, we are CAT active, we're here for this reason, right? We are active and engaged, but in CAT, we work with faculty from across the board, and there is a lot of sentiment of, there's nothing wrong with our program, there's nothing wrong with our department, it's the students that are recruiting. The students, they are recruiting, which means it's not us, we're not in us, we're not, so it's all kinds of things, and it starts like maybe pointing with administration first, but then it can trickle down eventually then to our colleagues next, right, them, and then it trickles down to our students, and that's just so dangerous. Anyway, sorry, Kelly.
It's okay. And then professional efficacy is where we start to feel like disengaged from work. Then we start to have actual poor outcomes at work. We get reduced satisfaction at work. We turn to substances and other things to start to feel better. All right, so this is when it's the opposite of that idealism and overload. Now we've just completely withdrawn. We can't get anything done. We're not being effective. We're so burnt out. We can't get it. We're not doing anything. All right, so this is kind of that far end of the spectrum where the burnout has gotten so bad that the person is completely withdrawn. So we obviously want to stop before we get to that point. And we don't have many faculty who last at Xavier if they get to this point. But we don't want to get to this point, right? We're still here.
Yeah.
And we're all here because we don't want to get to this point, right? We don't want to get to this point. But what do we do so we don't get to this point? That's the goal. So we can stay. Okay. So work-life balance, we all hear this term. All right. So first of all, we need to be honest in our evaluation of what our current work-life balance is. All right. And part of that is going to be your homework and completing that inventory. So be honest in your evaluation, right? Use your resources. And a lot of this we're going to talk about more in part 2, which is why you got to come back to 2. Yeah, this is just setting up. You gotta come back to part 2.
Yes, some people haven't come for this one.
Mhm.
Will this be available?
Yes, this will be available, I assume, on. Yes. Yes.
That's why I'm taking pictures. I'm
Okay.
like, I've texted people, this is what we're talking about. Which workshop is it? I'm like,
All right, engage in meaningful activities. What are meaningful activities? I don't know. What are your meaningful activities? This is the whole point. You have to figure out what they are. All right. You have to figure out what they are. Yes.
Oh man, I have a very vivid point. I remember it was like September, I want to say 2017, and I had a revise and resubmit that was due. And classes were over, but I kept coming to campus to try to do it here. And then I hit a certain wall where I was like, okay, clearly I'm not. I was like, what do I like to do?
Yeah.
Who am I? I have free time and I don't know what, and I just like drove and sat on the couch and just was like, this is really, I have time, like the gift of time.
Yes.
And I don't know what to do with it.
Yes.
And it's just over the years, really having certain what I call my come to Jesus moments, like, this is an indicator of something.
Yes.
Get what you like.
Yes.
What's happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
So-
then when I started to think, and then immediately go to, oh, I should clean out that closet, or,
Right.
you know, just,
Right,
it's not enjoyable,
right,
you know,
right.
like things I have to do, like if I have free time, something's wrong.
Yeah.
That's like-
Right, right.
Yeah.
That there's something wrong with not doing anything. Right, so that is something that we have to get rid of, the idea that there's something wrong
Yeah.
with downtime. Right, but the idea of what is your meaningful activity? All right, maybe it's not mindfulness or doing yoga or guided meditation or whatever is suggested. Maybe it is laying face down on your comforter eating Cheetos. Okay, that it doesn't matter. Whatever your meaningful activity is, that's what you need to do, especially if you're in a later stage of burnout. All right, you need to do what brings you meaning. Build a caring community. That's what we're working on right now. All right, that's part of what we're working on. Be willing to compromise. Counter unhelpful thinking. So that's what you were just talking about. This whole like, what do I like to do? Why am I on campus if I don't need to be? Right? We've all learned over the pandemic that we don't have to be here all the time to work. We do want to be here for our students. I'm not saying we don't need to be here, but we have certain assumptions that we make as we move through our careers that I think at this point in 2024, we're realizing aren't necessarily true. So counter these unhelpful thinking patterns. If I'm sitting here, I must be doing work. Do I have actual work to do right here? If I don't, could I perhaps do something relaxing instead? Find your joy. What's your joy?
The levy, read for pleasure.
Exactly.
If you can't answer this question, you better be able to answer this question for me by March. This is my joy now, is Taylor Swift. All right, reframing your mindset. So this is part of that. When you think about your career, your teaching, your life here at Xavier, who do you want to have an impact on? Is it the rank and tenure committee? Is it the administration? Is it the board of trustees? Who do you want to have an impact on? Again, are your career goals aligned with what you find meaningful? Okay, what does the impact look like? What are your priorities? All right, how do you know that you've achieved it, that impact, those goals? How much will it cost you to get there? So that's a question that I think is really important, because you can know where you want to go. You can know what kind of impact you want to have, and you can decide that it costs me too much to go there.
Yep, you can.
And I've made that decision a couple of times in my life.
Yes. There's a mentor and colleague in American Studies who talks about what is the work you want your work to do. And I try to repeat that over.
Mhm.
So like, I'm trying not to do work that's not doing the work.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Because your work is doing something.
yes, yes, yes. I think that's really important. No, I love that. What is the work you want your work to do? I love that. I love that. And I think we need to stop and think about this every semester, every few semesters, when you think about when you're writing your syllabus, when you're thinking about your outcomes, when you're thinking about your assignments. What is this putting on you? And again, think about what do you want to have an impact on? Are my assignments having the impact on my students that I want them to have? And are they having the impact on me that I want them to have? Right? Are the outcomes that my students are getting balanced out by the outcomes that they're having on me? That's an important thing to consider. Right? Am I assigning things that are beneficial at the expense of my own mental health? Right. Because really, would I be seriously compromising educational outcomes if I streamline something? Sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're not. Sometimes you are and you can't, but sometimes you're not. So it's important to think, what is the impact? What are the goals? How do they align with my priorities? All right. Because nobody's here to support us except ourselves at the end of the day. So we have to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves first before we wait for anybody else to take care of us.
That's especially true for women.
That's especially true for women. Yes.
And enlightenment.
Yes. And enlightenment.
Yeah.
Yes. So, as we wrap up for today, we have our homework. So you can scan the QR code, hopefully, to complete the burnout inventory. As you complete it, pay attention to your scores on each section, but more importantly, pay attention to how you feel when you're completing each section. Please take time to do this thoughtfully. Identify one area for your personal focus. So as you complete the inventory, if you find you have a high score, or the last section is actually, you would get a low score, identify one area for your personal focus and identify one area that you think we can focus on as a community. If you want to go ahead and identify how you're going to focus on it and come up with some things that you're going to focus on, you go as far as you want to with that, but at least identify one area that you want to focus on and identify one area that we can focus on as a community. And then next time we're going to talk about suggestions that the literature has for how universities should better support faculty. Hint, better pay, flexibility, all the great things that, you know, everybody should do. And then we'll talk about things we can all do individually, and we'll talk about whatever ideas we've all come up with for what we can suggest for Xavier, things we can maybe start here in CAT+FD, you know, what we can do to move forward and change. I'm a very action-oriented person. One of my favorite things to say to my daughter is be a problem solver. So I don't really like to sit around and wait for other people to do things. I like to do them myself. And finally, again, because I can't leave the science world behind, here are my references. Not all in APA style, because I didn't feel like doing the websites like that, but at least the papers are in APA style. And thank you so much.